Okay, so we're gonna, so by the way, okay, just when you see square brackets, that is a button that we're pressing, okay? So everything that has a square bracket around it, it represents that it's an actual button on your calculator, okay? So we're gonna just leave it at that for now. So I'm kind of gonna get you to write stuff down, show you how it's done, right? And then keep going so that it's fresh. I didn't do the online attendance yet, did I? No. Okay. It says classic with that, right? Yeah, I'm gonna go through that in a bit. Okay. Right, so if you turn it on, you should see the home screen here. And at the top, like these newer ones always tell you what your setup is anyways, right? That you're in normal mode, float, right? All those things are important to us. And that we're in degrees, right? For trigonometry, you need to make sure we're in degrees. But sometimes these are used by grade 12 students, so we press mode, okay? So let me just, are we good? So press mode, and you can leave it on math print. I think a lot of you will be on classic. Let's take it to math print because that's what I've been using for a while. It's just a different way of showing your entries. That's it. Like it's nicer using math print. Like when you square something, the exponent actually rises to the top. Okay, so normal. So basically, this is how you change something. If you go over, like let's say I go hover over with the arrow to classic and it's blinking, as soon as you hit enter, enter is at the bottom right. That's like your equal button. If you hit enter, it will switch to that. It will highlight it. So now you're set to classic, right? If you go over back to math print and hit enter, it will select that. So now it's set to math print, okay? And so we want it at normal, float. Make sure this is set to degrees, so most of you should be. Function, all of that should not have changed. But let's go all the way to where it says stat diagnostic, statistics. This is for statistics, so that diagnostic you want off. And make sure that the stat wizard is also turned off. Okay, so stat wizard, stat diagnostic, they're towards the bottom of the screen. That's where you do where you do that. Okay, so now I'm going to ask you to write down the next line, which is pressing second mode. And what that does is it exits the current screen you're in and takes you back home. All right. Back into this. So if you were to press second mode right now, so go ahead and try that. So second, that's a very popular button, by the way, second, and then mode. You quit that screen, takes you back to the home screen. It may be clear right now, but there's the next entry that I want you to write down. If you press clear once, it deletes the row you're in. If you press it one more time, it will clear your whole screen. Okay. So let's say you're typing away, right? You're entering something and you're like, oh no, that's not what I wanted. You just press clear, and then clear again will completely clean the slate, right? So it's a completely clear screen. Should clarify that this is the pi button. So how about, I think I'm just gonna get you to write down a bunch of stuff here. A lot of these things are, you're so used to technology, so it's like you're gonna teach me after a while how to use this, right? So I'm just gonna get you to write those things down, and then we're just gonna practice a little bit. There's some nuances that are definitely annoying that we have to make sure we address so that we're not stuck on that, because it can actually frustrate you. These calculators, they don't just, they send you an error message. If they don't like how you typed it in, it will give you an error. So we have to know when we see a certain error, what happens, right? Everybody got the handouts, right? Make sure you get them before you leave.
I was in there for the first two calls. Did I miss anything important or was it
I did a lot of review, which was like IPR stuff,
oh,
and the videos were posted on Google Classroom.
gotcha.
Always press classwork. Classwork is where everything is organized, not the stream. The stream is like messy and stuff. Just go classwork and it's all organized there. Okay.
So like the third call was just a review for what?
Basically, the first 3 days we reviewed. And I guess the first day I talked a little bit more about how we're gonna run things, like to be here every day and even Mondays. We're still gonna meet on Mondays. Will every Monday be like a full class? It may not be. Like I could cut it short, be like, okay, now you do work for the rest of the period or whatever. So, are we good? All right. So yeah, just a couple of things like the pi button we'll need for measurement. Okay, so if you clear your screen, right, just keep on hitting clear a bunch of times, your screen will be gone, like completely clean. So second, right, if you press second and that little hat button, which is just here, right here, underneath clear, there's that hat, that's the exponent button. But then you get pi, right, on your screen. So that's good. And if you were to hit enter now, it will actually give you the first couple digits of pi, right? If you want the square root, you go second. You would think a calculator would have the square root readily available, but no, they make you hit second, right? Second is basically like your shift button, right? So then you see the square root and you can type in, right, square root of 81 or whatever, hit enter, and you get 9. Right? Cube root, there is no cube root anywhere on the screen. So there's two ways of doing that, right? So let's say you want to take the cube root of 8. You could go 8, press the little hat button, like this hat button here underneath clear. See how that's math print. It automatically takes it up. Use brackets on this one. 1/3. Do you remember that? Your radicals, right? 1/3 is really cube root. Does that ring a bell? Or has it been too long?
Kind of.
Has been a bit. Okay. So that it's 2. But the easiest way to do it is if you go math, press math here underneath alpha. There's the math button right there. And see option number 4 on the side here. Option number 4 has the cube root. So you can just press 4 on your calculator or use the arrows to go down and then you press enter, right? And then the cube root comes to your home screen and you can type in, right, cube root of 8 and then hit enter and it does the same thing. Does that make sense? Yeah, we're good. So exponents, we've got that. Squares, obviously the x2 button here, right? Down here my finger is the x2 is to square. Okay, so if you want to square 8, right, should be 64, you got that. This is very important here. There are 2 negative buttons on your calculator, so I'm going to make you see that. You see the negative down here, right? There's that one, and some students mistake the negative with subtracting. Okay, when you're trying to enter a negative value, you always use this guy right here. And oftentimes, 99% of the time, if you weren't supposed to use this one, it will complain. Like it will say error, syntax error is like the most common one, saying like you didn't type it in right. Okay, so if you're referring to -2, then type in negative using this one and then 2, all right? So I'll show you what that looks like. So for example, let's write down that example. Look at all that. That's just messy, right? I will never make you do that. This is just for notes purposes, okay? So you might actually not even look at that anymore after today. But it's just showing you exactly which buttons you'll be pressing if you wanted to enter this into your calculator, okay? So you should have above 8 and 9, you have those two brackets. So they work just like normal brackets would, okay? Okay, so if you wanted to type in, right, -13 squared, okay, you would have to start with a bracket, right? Then use the negative down here, which is underneath 3, right? How about for this thing, I'm going to zoom out a little bit so you can see, okay? So I'm using the negative and then 13. I close the bracket. I use the X2 button for squaring, and then I hit enter. You should get 169. And I'm going to talk about this later, but let's copy this down. So use your arrow up once. It highlights the answer, right? Let's go arrow up one more time. It should highlight the -13 squared. If you want to copy that, hit enter right now. And hit enter, it will copy that down so you can keep using it. So let's go in here. Let's go arrow back. So I'm just going arrow backwards until I highlight the negative. Okay. So let's say you pressed minus instead of negative. So the subtract, I'm going to press that. So it looks slightly different, right? It's right in front. So what happens when you hit enter there? You get an error, right? I wanted that to happen. So if you hit enter, you get error and it says syntax. Syntax is a coding, right, term that you've made a mistake. When you see this, you can quit, which is going to take you back to the home screen, or you can press 2 for go to. Right? If you press number 2, second option, it actually highlights what it doesn't like most of the time. Okay, so it doesn't like that minus, so we have to replace that with a negative, which looks like that. And then you press enter again, and it's there. Does that make sense? Okay, I might be going a bit slow, but when I rush, I always tend to rush. So watch this, folks. If you were to go up, arrow up, even though you cleared your screen earlier, right? You can go back quite a number of times until you run out. And let's say it's like, no, I don't want to see this. You press clear, and then it will just delete a few things. So you want to go back all the way back down until you're here, right? And then if you hit clear, it will get rid of all of it, okay? So there's that. Um, I will make this optional. I just showed you how to do this, but to copy the previous answer or expression, use the up and down arrows, highlight, then press enter. And this only works for the yellow set. Like if you did not get the yellow set, you all did, by the way. But if you didn't, this would not work. It's a little bit more tedious. So let me zoom in for those of you who want to write this down. I have a feeling, you might be fine now, but later you might be like, what was it again? Right? Don't worry about this. This is for the older calculators, okay? So I'm just gonna cover it and go to the next page because you all have yellow calculators. Mhm. We're good. In that case, I'm gonna put the back side. So now we're going to slowly enter graphing lines using the TI-84. That's just short for your graphing calculator. And at first, it's just as easy as 1, 2, 3. But to get to that point, we're going to have to do some practice and talk about the common issues that arise. All right. So there's a couple of things. There are 4 things you need to account for. So there's going to be a bunch of stars here, okay? Asterisk number 1, always clear all old equations by hitting clear, okay? So you will most likely all have a bunch of equations in there, and I need you to clear them, okay? So, because you can graph up to, is it 9 or 10? Yeah, I think 10. You can graph up to 10 lines at the same time. So you want to clear them all so that they don't, you don't graph them as well, because then you're getting it wrong, right? The second warning is plot 1 needs to be off. If it is highlighted, which most likely it is going to be for you, because later on we do turn it on, but that's like later on. For now, you have to turn it off. Okay, so that's another thing there. The third point, you only have the option of using x as your variable. So let's say you're trying to enter an equation that's using t's or n's or whatever. The calculator only knows x as the other variable other than y, okay? So you won't, so the only way to do it is always to say, okay, well, I'm going to use x as my variable, and try to find that button as soon as you're done writing this line. It's right next to alpha, which alpha should be a green button on your calculator. It's like a top left of your keyboard. There's that xt theta n button. It looks like this, okay? So do not think that, oh, there's an x there, I'm going to press times on my calculator. That's not a variable for the calculator. You have to press this button if you want to insert an x there. Fourth asterisk is if the first value is negative, we use the negative, not the subtract. Very important, or else it will probably give you a syntax error. We're good? So there was step 1, step 2, step 3, and then I gave you all these warnings, right? So those after a while you're just gonna know. You're gonna be able to troubleshoot like, oh, what's wrong here? Okay, I just did the negative, right? So that's gonna take some practice. Press graph. So again, graph is in square brackets. That means it's a button, and that button is found at the very top, right under the screen. There's y equals Windows, Zoom, Trace, and Graph. So I'm going to show you just once quickly. These 4 here, they all have to do with the graph, okay? the ones that are closest to the screen, they all have something to do with the actual graph. If you can't see anything, try Zoom 6. That's going to be your first go-to because that resets something. And if that fails, then I'll show you in a bit how to go about it. And this is what it will do. And right now, those numbers are going to mean nothing to you. But after, it should. So just write them down for now. Okay, you just have to trust me on this.
Our teachers are gonna teach like on weekdays.
I will only teach weekdays, yeah.
Oh.
During this period, like whatever your slot is, slot D, right? That's the only one I'm gonna ever teach, like during my slot, right? Like I can't take somebody else's slot to teach. It's like, hey, I feel like doing it in a morning, right? Morning class. I can't do that.
How about on Fridays and Sundays?
I will never. No, never. Nope. Rarely, like maybe sometimes when we're running out of time, I'll tell you, I'll post the homework right after this, like right after class, but I will not send you something on the weekends or anything like that. No. Good question though. And the same goes the other way. If you ask me a question on the weekend, I may or may not answer it. Just put it that way. I will look at it and I might reply to you first thing Monday morning. So sometimes students just need to ask right there and then because it's fresh, right? So do that and then I will reply later on. And it probably will help me. I might actually answer it during the next lesson because I'm like, okay, a bunch of people are asking the same thing. Okay. So there's the window values. There's the window already. We talked about that. And now we need to understand what the window function, right? So I will tell you what it does, and then later on I will show you how to work it. If you understand what it does, it's a lot easier to work it, okay? So as you're writing it down, maybe listen at the same time. So yeah, the window basically, those values, like you're giving it parameters, like I want to see this section of the coordinate plane. Like you give it a start and a stop sideways, and you give it a start and a stop vertically. So you can only see that section of the coordinate plane on your screen. So let's say you set the values to in such a way that you're looking at quadrant 1, but the graph is somewhere in quadrant 2 or 4, you won't be able to see it. So you think it's not graphing it. It actually is graphing it. You're just not looking in the right place.
Will you be taking pictures of notes and then sending it to me in the classroom if it's like really needed?
If it's what?
But if it's like an important like lesson, like you take the picture of
Oh,
the
like
notes.
scan my notes.
Yeah. And just like put it in the
For now, I won't,
Okay.
just because I have so many things going right now. Like I'm doing the video and everything. But like if you for whatever reason missed it or whatever and you really need it, let me know. Yeah. All right. So before we continue copying, I will ask you to grab your calculators and sorry, you grab your calculators and you press window. Okay. I want you to press that window button. So we're essentially going to use all of these buttons, right? Graphing, obviously that's for graphing. Y equals, that's where you enter your equations. Window and zoom are sort of related. Zoom zooms in or out, and the window and zoom affects your windows to a certain degree. But if you manually want to change parameters, you press the window button, and you see a bunch of entries, and you might be overwhelmed right now. That's normal. But we're never, the only ones I want you to really focus on right now is X min, X max. So the X values are delimited, right? You're limiting them. And then you have your Y min and Y max. So X min, X max, Y min, Y max. You will never change the other values. Not with me. Maybe with a different teacher next year. You don't need to change the scale. Okay? Let's quit this. How would you quit this? I want to go back to the home screen. How would you do that? Second mode. Okay? Takes you back to the home screen. Second mode that quits whatever you're in. Whenever you want to go back to home screen, second mode does that. So I will ask you to write that down, right? So these are the entries you just saw there, but we're only focusing on the ones that are boxed in. Just 1 second, folks. I'm just going to stop this here because earlier it just froze on me and it was all gone. So I'm going to